Well, good evening. Welcome to the Brothas-in-law. I'm Corey Taylor, and my host tonight is Mr. Michael Bradley. For those of you who are new to us, both Mike and I are both former law enforcement police officers. Mike uh, retired, almost 2 years ago now,
26
Mike?
years. Yeah,
Yeah,
been about a little let's see. Yeah, a little over a year now. Wow.
yeah. He did 26 years with the Pleasanton Police Department in California, and I was a former Virginia State Trooper for 7 years here in the great state of Virginia. So welcome to the show, everybody, and we're glad you're here. We got a good one to talk about tonight, one that hits kind of close to home for Mike and I, being that we're both from Canton, Ohio, and this shooting took place in Canton, Ohio. And so before we get into it, if you're new to our channel, please go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button so that you stay up to date on all our latest videos that we come out with. We try to post every week or go live every week, I should say, and start the conversation of policing in our communities and looking at the actions of these law enforcement officers and the citizens through a different lens other than what you see portrayed out on TV. So,
Right.
but tonight,
Right.
I'm going to go ahead, Mike, and put this out. There are going to be some of y'all that are not going to like what we say. There are going to be some of you who agree with what we say. But what we're trying to do is give you a different perspective of ways to look at this, and other than going to rush into judgment and not hearing all the facts and looking at it uh, outside of what the media is telling you or showing you on the news. So, Mike, you got anything to add?
No, that's exactly right, Corey. You said it best. We just
Basically,
gonna give you a viewpoint of you know take race out of it. We're gonna take a situation, an officer involved situation, and tell you whether or not we would have done what they did, or whether or not, or whether we could see why an officer did do what they do or didn't do what they didn't do. You see what I'm saying? That's it.
right,
That's all we're trying to
right,
do. So that at least as a citizen, it gives you an inside look of, well, yeah, I didn't think of that, or I didn't know that much information. You know what I'm saying? Or I didn't realize that an officer would be thinking the way they were thinking at that time. You see what I'm saying? That's all. We just want to give it to you like, like we would see it and from a neutral standpoint to many
right.
in many ways.
Right. And you're on point, Zach. I mean, it's about, respecting people's viewpoints, and that's what we want, is being respectful for everybody's viewpoints, because we're all gonna see things differently, right? So we know this happened on New Year's Eve in Canton, Ohio. Um, when I first saw this, Mike, when it
Mhm.
was put in our chat, and I saw the video, and the first thing that came to my mind, hey mom, first thing that came
Hey,
to
Miss
my mind
Taylor.
was, um, why was the police officer called there? So when we look at things, we have to look at it from an investigator's point of view,
Mhm.
right? Take all your emotions out of it,
Right.
right? Like Mike
Right.
just said, take race out of it and take your emotions out of it. And let's start looking at what we know, because it's what we know that what's going to lead us to the next piece of evidence or
And
step.
not only that, also we want you to keep in mind or try to learn what would have been in an officer's mind at
Right,
that moment or responding to that call.
right,
And why would that officer think certain things? You see what I'm saying?
right,
That's important.
right. Because as we stated before in our previous videos, um, the officer, you have to think about it, like Mike just said, the officer's mindset and what they have to process in 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 a drop of a dime. I mean, it's not like they have all the time in the world, because they have to make a decision, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. A decision has to be made, and it is our hope that we always make the right decision.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, all right, let me go ahead and set this up here.
Tim wants to know if you can see him on Facebook.
No.
No. Better to go to YouTube, Tim. Go to YouTube, Brothas-in-law on YouTube. Check it out. If you can't see us on Facebook, we'll see you. If you make a comment, we'll see it. We're on live, so we'll definitely see it.
All right. Here we and this is graphic. So I mean, if you're don't like graphic things, go ahead and tune out for about 3 minutes, 3 minutes and 33 seconds to be exact, and then you can chime back in. But that's about how long the video lasts. As usual, we'll play the video, Mike, and then we'll make our commentary after. Or unless you want to break it down in between, we can do that as well.
No, we can play the whole video, but keep in mind, I didn't catch whether or not this was a call for service, where the officer responded to this area for a call for service, or whether or not this officer was just patrolling the area and randomly looking for people shooting firearms. I don't know how the officers got there in the first place. Do you know that, Corey?
What's up, Blackjack 3? Yeah, from one article that I read, that they were already in that area for shots being fired or investigating the shooting, because, and we'll get into that, but that's the first part to why were they there. So without further ado, here we go.
All right.
It's going to be correction. It's going to be 2300 block of the 10th Street, 2307 10th Street Southwest. Saw the male's head through the fence after I heard the shots. Got on my cruiser, went up to the porch, and I saw him putting the rifle away.
Stop right there, Corey.
All right.
Okay. So he said, what did he say now? He's in the area. So he saw the guy putting the rifle away.
He said he saw the guy's head through the fence and then come back in the house and put the gun away. Now, he don't know which guy. How many guys are in the house. So we don't know which guy are you talking about? Because clearly there was somebody else in the house, and he might not have been seeing the shooter.
So he at least knows at this point, it sounds like he believes anyway that this guy had a rifle that he had shot already and was putting the rifle away. Is that fair to say? That's what I'm gathering here. You know what I'm saying? What do you think, Corey? Is that fair to say? And I'm breaking it down like this because I want to make sure, I want to see what my mind frame would be as an officer going to this call or involved in this call. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. I from one of the articles that I did read, that's, and according to what his own statements are in the video, is that he's allegedly saw the guy's head through the fence, and I guess, I don't know how he saw him come back into the house and put the gun in there, but then no sooner after he says that, and you'll see it here in just a second, folks, shots rang out. Now, so that's telling me now you saw a different guy, because this guy was already in the backyard shooting out rounds. You
so
see
they're there for a call for service of shots being fired. It is New Year's Eve. You see what I'm saying? So we don't know, is this just shots being fired, first of all? Okay, so they get there. He must have already seen this guy shoot his rifle at some point and then stop.
Yeah, I don't think we know that, though.
Okay, all right.
I don't
but at some point, he does say he saw a guy put his rifle away.
Right. Allegedly saw the guy put the rifle away.
Okay, all right.
He didn't give any, and see, that's he didn't give any identification or description of that guy.
Yeah, so he don't know if the guy that he saw was the guy that people were calling about yet.
Correct.
Yeah, not yet. Okay.
Correct. All right, here we go.
Shots fired. Shots fired. Police, get down now! Police, get down now! Can't come. Shots fired. Send us everybody.
So at this point, the officer did.
He was right there. See the gun?
Say again, Mike.
So at this point, the officer did shoot through the fence, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. At least a couple of rounds probably through the fence.
Yeah. Do you want to talk on that piece? You want to keep it going?
Yeah, let's talk on that piece for a minute. You know.
All right. So I think this is where everybody is going to have problems with this part right here, right? You now put your emotions aside.
Right.
Put your emotions aside.
Let me preface this like right now.
Go ahead.
Before we go any further, Corey, because you and I haven't really had an opportunity to talk about what we would have done at this point.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, folks, you might have two different opinions here on what we would have done in that particular situation, and that's okay. Okay, but we want it like that so that you guys can see there could be two different viewpoints or two different mindsets here. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
From two former officers who could probably say what they would have done in this particular situation. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, from my perspective, Corey, I'm investigating shots being fired in a particular area. Okay, I see a guy at some point putting a rifle away into a house, and I'm in the area where the shots were heard. I at least am going to investigate whether or not this is the guy that we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Out of nowhere, guy steps out again with the rifle and starts shooting it in the air. Now, I counted when I was listening to this video, I counted at least probably about 39 or 40 shots in succession, right? One after the other. 40 shots in the air. So let me say this, folks, before we go any further. There is no clear definition of an irresponsible gun owner than somebody shooting rounds up in the air in a residential neighborhood. All those rounds that are going up in the air must come down. And can those rounds hit or kill someone when they come down? Absolutely. There could be kids in the area, people in the area, people sitting in cars in the area. That is the first thing I want to say is that is the true definition of an irresponsible gun owner. Now, I'm not saying that this guy should have been shot, but I'm just breaking it down one at a time. Never be shooting. If you the type that you go outside and you shoot your gun up in the air, you're an irresponsible gun owner and you have no business having that firearm. Okay, especially in a residential neighborhood. You got anything to add to that, Corey?
Yeah, and I think that's cute. A very good point right there, Mike, because you can't do that. Now, if you were out in the country somewhere where your nearest neighbor was like, 2 miles away, all right, have at it. But when you're in a inner city and you're tight neighborhoods, you can't do that. That's reckless. And like Mike said, what goes up has to come down. Now, you can see clearly in there that there are other officers in the distance. Like I said, they were already there investigating some type of shooting. Now, it did come out in another article I read that somewhere in that vicinity, 2 gentlemen were killed, shot in the head. One of the individuals that was shot, he did live. He stated that, he was sitting in a car and was hit in the head with the round.
And this is in the same neighborhood?
This is in the same neighborhood. I don't know how, in the same vicinity. So you have to keep in mind, did the officer have that information? He might have, being the fact that they were in that neighborhood for a call of service for shots being fired, right?
Okay.
And it's reckless, like you just said, right? Well, almost 40 rounds shot off recklessly like that. You gotta the officer now. Keep in mind, I have to think about those rounds going up in the air that he's shooting, and who could be outside. It is New Year's Eve. Other people could be outside shooting fireworks. I don't know, but I have to assume that there's other people out there that could get hit by those rounds. Is he a threat? That's the question. That's my question to the audience tonight. Was that guy a threat? Should I perceive him as a threat? And let's go ahead and get into it. Would I have?
All right, Corey, let me ask you, as an officer, going to that. Let's get black and white with it for a moment. Not race. I'm talking about black and white as far as simple versus complicated.
Yeah.
You see that guy shooting in the air. Looking at the video, I see the smoke, the gas is released from the rifle going into the air, and you see it. There's a guy back there shooting a rifle in the air, right? What are you gonna do? You met with that. What do you do, Corey?
You're in a tough situation as an officer, no doubt. I'm not going to sugarcoat that and say there's a clear and cut answer to it. But if I'm in that situation, based on the information that I may have at that time, but I also got to keep in mind that, people are living in these houses in this neighborhood. Would I have acknowledged myself first? Probably not, because who's going to hear me? And I'm sure a lot of you have shot guns before. Hey, Katrina, I see you. I'm sure a lot of people have shot off guns before, and they're pretty loud. And if you shot AR-15s or any type of assault rifle off before, when they ring out like that, it's putting a ringing in your ear, and you're not hearing too much of anything. So me yelling, saying, "Hey, put the gun down, you're not going to hear it. So there may be instances where you would have to shoot first. And then
I see you, Tim. I see you on.
Hey, what's up, Frank? And then you may, hey, Matt, thanks for joining us, buddy. Then afterwards, like he did, acknowledge your presence. So you can have a heartburn with that, but that's just the reality of it when you're in that fight like that. Being able to get the acknowledge. Now they do always train. Hey, you need to acknowledge yourself, and that's more on for a legality type side of you announcing your presence. But
I mean, there could be situations where you don't need to announce your presence. You need to take action immediately.
Right, and this
I
could
understand
be
that too,
situation, Mike. This could be
that. I understand where you're coming from. I understand the thought process. So for me, you said, is this guy a threat? Well, yeah, he's a threat to people around him because, like I said, what goes up must come down. However, as an officer, if I were to come up on this scene, I'm going to see the shots, and I'm probably not going to. I'm not going to shoot through the fence. Hey, Tone, I'm not going to shoot through the fence. I'm not going to shoot until I can see my target. Number one, because you don't know what's behind you, what's behind there. There could be his kid out there with him. The officer shot through the fence. You could accidentally hit the kid. You just don't know. This guy with the gun, it is New Year's Eve. You got to take into consideration that people do fire guns in the air at New Year's Eve. So did this guy in this house firing this gun in the air, did he have reason to believe that the police were right outside his door? No, he wouldn't have known that because the cops didn't make any announcement that they were there. There was no lights and siren. There's no emergency lights or anything. Not that the police should have had lights, but there wasn't. So I'm probably not going to shoot. What I would do is I see the shots firing. I'm going to, number one, get cover. Okay,
what's up,
I'm
Greg?
going to put out on the air. I hear shots being fired. I'm going to put that out on the radio. I hear shots being fired. And then I'm going to try to give commands. Now, like you said, Corey, when somebody is firing a weapon, that's a loud noise. They probably ain't going to hear you when you try to get commands. You see what I'm saying? So there comes the grade point. You see what I'm saying? Are you going to wait until they finish, or are you going to take action? You see what I'm saying? Me, I'm still, unless I can see my target, I'm still not going to shoot, especially not through a fence. You see what I'm saying? So I'm going to give command. I'm going to try to give commands to let them know the police are out here. Put the gun down.
Hey, Kerry.
You see what I'm saying? But this officer didn't do that.
I feel you on that. I mean, like I say, it's a bad situation as a law enforcement officer to put yourself in.
Definitely.
You have to do you have to make a decision because he has to look at other life, right? Who else can be impacted by him shooting off recklessly like that? And you don't know what's going on inside the house, right? To go up there, at that point, it seemed like he was by himself. It almost seems like they were casing or canvassing the neighborhood to find out where these shots were ringing out from previously, because as Zach just said earlier, and I think I had mentioned it already, that there's already been 2 individuals in that area that have been shot. So what we don't know is where they shot by this guy's rounds. It was also reported too that he, this wasn't the first time when he get shot here that he had shot off some rounds. So, the officer has a lot to process at that moment. Would I have shot through there? Mike, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. But
I can accept that answer because
I don't know. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I would say, yeah, I shot through there, but I don't know, because I'm just like you said, I'm going to be cautious of what's on the other side. Now, did he have a good shot? Did he know exactly what? I mean, you could pretty much judge where he is by where the barrel of the gun was coming up from. Maybe he was using that as his sights to get the shot. I don't know.
Yeah,
I wasn't there.
But you still, nonetheless, you still got the same dangers of possibly hitting somebody else that's unintended behind that fence. Number one.
You do.
And number two, even the guy that's shooting, I mean, the guy with the rifle that's shooting in the air, do you think he would have put that gun down if he would have known officers were outside? Yeah, I think he might have. I think he might have. They weren't shooting at the officers. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, they were recklessly firing it in the air, but they weren't shooting at the cops. And my perception, if I was there, like I say, I'm going to first take cover, try to call him out. Whatchamacallit, Craig said something about he could have went and knocked on the door. Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate for you a little bit, Craig, and say he might not have had time. By the time he saw the guy walk back in the house and put the rifle away, maybe he was walking up, getting ready to walk and approach the door, but then the guy came back out and started shooting. He might not have had time to go knock on the door. You see what I'm saying? And not only that, if you see a shooting, you may not want to just recklessly, as an officer, walk up to the door. That could be an unsafe advantage. You walk up to the door and somebody shoots you through the door, just like this officer shot through the fence. That's a dangerous situation too. So keep that in mind. This is what I would be thinking as an officer. I'm not going to go up to the door just all willy-nilly and knock on the door and say, hey, somebody shooting in here? You see, I'm not going to do that. What I will do is get cover, number one. And I'm going to ask our dispatchers, do we have any phone numbers in the house to contact somebody in this house? Can you try to make a phone call in that house? Do you have any history of individual names that we've dealt with in the past at that house? If we can get in contact with them. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to do all that first.
While shots are being ringing off, you're going to go do all that first.
Well, there's got to be a point in there where he's gonna run out of bullets.
That's that gray line right there, Mike. Like, okay, Blackjack says he could have waited until he stopped. He was not a threat to the officer, not a direct threat to the public. Well, I don't know.
That could be arguable. Not a direct threat.
I'm shooting up into the air. Remember, those rounds are going to come down somewhere. Somebody's house got damaged. Somebody's vehicles got damaged, and some people.
Kid could be sleeping in the bedroom upstairs in his own house.
Right. Just because I'm not pointing directly at you doesn't mean I'm still not a threat. If I shoot up above your head, boom, 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 trying to scare you off or whatever, that's reckless. that's still reckless, is it not?
No, I agree. I agree. That is reckless. If you looking at me and I'm a police officer, and I know you looking at me, and I know you can identify me as a police officer, and I'm telling you to put the gun down, and you continue to shoot in the air, you might get shot. You see what I'm saying? But in this situation, though, Corey, this guy didn't know that there were police right outside his house. That's what I'm hung up on. He didn't know that there were police right outside his house, and he was doing, although reckless, he was doing something that people in his neighborhood commonly do on New Year's Eve, and that's fire guns in the air. As an officer, you got to have all that in mind and say, am I going to just directly possibly take this guy's life by shooting him through a fence and possibly hitting him and hitting somebody else not intended for him shooting in the air? I think that's the question.
But here's the thing that, and this is on the legality side, folks, that the officers got to think of too. Like you just said, Mike, officers are you're pretty much damned if you do and damned if you don't. And what I mean by that is, okay, say I sit and wait. What do we say? How many rounds did he shoot off?
40, at least 40. Yeah.
Right. And I sit there and I just sit there and wait until he's done. Then I can acknowledge myself. Well, out of that 40 rounds, what if 4 or 5 more people get killed? And then it's going to come back on the police. Well, why didn't you do something?
As you see, folks, you see how Corey and I have two different thought processes here? This is the same it would be for any officer to come up on this situation. There are moments where one officer's actions and perceptions may be different than the next. You see what I'm saying?
And not that.
Go ahead, Corey. Go ahead.
Not that, and we're both are staying within the rule of law and department policies, but we just have two different approaches. We're both looking at safety. What is safety? And like, Katrina's saying here, I think it was a definite threat, not only to the neighbors, but to his own family as well, to the police. Yeah. I mean, so what do you do? What do you do? That's the question tonight. And leave us your answers down below in the comments. What do you do? Do you not shoot and risk other people getting hurt?
That's something to think about. And Tim says the cop shot through the fence and then announced his presence. That's okay. Don't get caught up into that.
Don't get caught up in that, Tim.
You sometimes you might feel like you got to shoot, and then at some point you better get on the air and say shots fired. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Right. He may not. You might have something that happened in front of you and perceive that you have to take action immediately before you even get on the radio. It takes some time to get on the radio and say shots fired. You see what I'm saying? Versus having to address a threat right there in front of you.
Right. So the way we were trained at the academy was, if you're in a situation like that and you have to shoot off rounds first, we always were taught that immediately after the fact, you say, hey, state police, whatever the case may be, or Pleasanton County Police, you acknowledge yourself. And like I said, there's nothing written in stone that said, oh, you must give first. No, because it always doesn't fold out that way. Right. So that's our perspective.
Hey, Kirk, I see you, Kirk. I see you, Frank.
You have to you have to put emotions aside. Now you have to look at, okay, what is really going on? Let's look at the big picture now. We have to leave emotions aside. We have to leave race out of it, and we have to look at what we know. And that's how
Let me address Kirk says, do you always have to shoot to kill? That's a very common question that a lot of citizens have. You shoot to stop the threat. That is the best way I can say and explain that as an officer having to shoot someone, is you shoot to stop the threat. We don't train to shoot people in the hand. We don't train to shoot people in the foot. We don't train to shoot people in the leg. when we using deadly force.
Deadly
We
force. Mm-hmm.
train to hit people center mass, right in the chest. That's where we train. And sometimes in the head. Sometimes you need a kill shot that we call, you shoot him in the head. But ultimately, you're shooting to stop the threat. That's it. That's it. There's nothing beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay? So you take someone down without taking them out. Yes, you can. Now you're getting into some other stuff. Like if I had a beanbag shotgun, for instance, right, Corey? If you got a beanbag shotgun and your shotgun, a beanbag shotgun is basically a shotgun that fires non-lethal rounds it's a beanbag. Now, can a beanbag shotgun be lethal? Yeah, if you shoot somebody in the head with it, it could be lethal. You see what I'm saying? But that is the only time we will train in shooting bodies in the most meaty parts. Your upper thighs, your upper arms, or your chest, anywhere in the upper torso. You see what I'm saying? But that's a less than lethal weapon that we don't mean to. We want to try that before we have to go to lethal. That's all. Yeah. So that should answer your question, Kurt. You can take someone down without actually killing them. You see what I'm saying?
And Mike and I did a video last year on shoot to kill and deadly force. You can go to our YouTube page and check it out. But the officers, Kirk, we're trained to stop the threat. Even in the military, it's still the exact same training. It's to stop the threat. It's not. I wish I could speak for every officer, Kirk, but I can't. I can only speak for the guys that I know that I work for. And nobody has that mentality of, hey, I'm just going to go out and just gun people down. Let me tell you, I never want to have to pull my gun out because we know at the end of the day, it's bad for everybody if we have to pull that gun out.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think I shared a story last week how I almost shot a guy around the corner from my house last year. And another thing, when you're talking about stopping the threat, if he stops, like the video we showed you last week, the guy shot twice, the subject went down, he was done shooting. You shoot till the threat is stopped. Now, if that's one shot, he goes down, good to go. If it's two, he drops, good to go. If it's my full magazine, he's still coming at me and I have to reload and he's still coming and then finally he drops. So that's just the way it is. But we're trained to stop the threat. So, and I think the public, we have to get past that. Okay, this isn't Hollywood. Hollywood tells you that they can shoot a gun out your hand or they can shoot you, in the ankle. Nah, in reality, that's not how it works.
Yeah, that's TV stuff right there.
That's TV. We're trained to stop the threat. We're trained to shoot you in the center mass. Why? Like Mike said, it's just a bigger target, and you're going to go down.
And I don't want to get too far off the subject, but in this particular video, in this particular incident, I think number one, people will have a problem with this officer shooting through a fence without actually seeing his target. That's something that's going to be arguable. And number two, it's going to be arguable whether or not someone thinks the use of deadly force against someone who is shooting a firearm in the air is that a reason to use deadly force against someone. And as you guys can see, both Corey and I got a different perception, a different viewpoint on that. You see what I'm saying? But neither one of us want to kill anybody, right? But both of us see something as a threat differently. You see what I'm saying? Not that I don't see it as a threat. Because I decided not to shoot does not mean I don't see it as a threat. That just means my decision for not shooting is simply because I like to see my target, if at all possible, before I shoot, number one. And number two, although it's reckless to shoot a gun in the air, me personally, I don't think I would feel as threatened to where I got to take immediate action to use deadly force. Yet. Not that I wouldn't come to that position at some point. Like Corey said, if you got a machine gun or you just keep shooting rounds in the air, maybe I might change my thought process. But you see how many rounds this guy got off, which was 40 rounds in probably a couple of seconds. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Go ahead, Corey.
Now, I was just gonna read off a couple comments here. And Katrina said, "Yeah, no officer wants to kill someone," and you're absolutely right. I mean, you, and if you have that mindset, then you very well should never have went through the police academy, to become a police officer.
Right.
Right. Matt says, in air was in the moment, not known. This was only intent. Hard decision for the officer. Absolutely. I mean, you put yourself in that officer's situation, right? What are some of the things that you're going to be processing through your head? Right? You got fellow officers out down the street there working another shooting. You got people inside their homes. You got people probably outside, maybe shooting off fireworks. And I'm speculating. I don't know if other people are outside, but it is New Year's Eve. A lot of people like to come outside. I know they do in our neighborhood and shoot off fireworks. So
Zach brings up a good point too, Corey.
What's that?
He says, now, did they know for a fact he was shooting live rounds? Basically, AR-15s have mods for blanks. Well, Zach, that's a good question. Number one, but number two, as an officer, I have to assume that you're shooting live rounds. I'm never going to assume that you're firing blanks, even if you can. If it looks like a gun, sounds like a gun, I'm going to assume it's a gun. You see what I'm saying? I mean, I'm going to assume you firing live rounds. Period.
Live rounds, yeah. You have to. But it's one of those situations, like I said earlier, you don't want to have to be in. But then, what do you do? The thought process that this officer has to go through to make that decision. He made the decision. Now, the question is, is he going to be able to articulate in the court that he wasn't shooting recklessly himself, and can he articulate that? Yeah, I knew exactly, guesstimate where this guy was behind the fence, and took the shot. We don't know what we don't know what other piece of information he knew. That's why he took the shots. I don't know. I just don't think, though, Mike. In all honesty, I would have waited until he finished shooting before I made a decision.
And I think I hear what you're saying, and I understand that thought process, because you think that them firing rounds in the air is a danger. That's a threat, immediate threat that you need to use deadly force. And that, I think that's where we will have a different perception right there. And it's important that I want people to understand that two officers with two different perceptions. Not that we trying to kill somebody. Not that we have some ill will. We both have two different perceptions of this and two different opinions. And that's natural. That's normal. I wouldn't have fired. I would have got behind cover. I would have tried to give commands. I would have tried to call into the house and make contact with somebody in the house to let them know I'm outside. Somebody is outside your house shooting behind your privacy fence. You need to let them know. Do you know who it is? Maybe they can give me some information. I guess I wouldn't have felt an immediate threat to the point where I needed to fire through a fence without seeing my target. That's my position. That's all. Now, again, folks, listen. It's easy for us to sit here and talk like this because we have all the time in the world to look at this incident and speculate and dissect and analyze to see whether or not we would have made that decision. That officer at that moment, he didn't have this kind of time to sit back. Should I shoot or shouldn't I? He didn't have that kind of time. You see what I'm saying? Corey and I, we got that kind of time to sit back and look at the video over and over again and decide, would I have done this? Would I have done that? No, that officer had to make a decision immediately, right then and there. Guys shooting in 40 rounds in the air, what you gonna do?
Yep. What are you gonna do?
You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you, Matt. Hindsight is 20/20, man. And like Blackjack says, he thinks the jury will find him reckless, being that the family was in the house.
They might.
I don't know. They could, but a lot of factors still are at play there. Like he didn't shoot into the dwelling, right?
No, so, he did shoot through a blind fence where not seeing target.
Right.
not clearly seeing the backdrop, or I should say, not knowing whether or
Well,
not there would have
Mike,
been somebody in
okay.
there.
So let me ask you this: how often do we really know what our backdrop is when we pull the weapon out and we're going to shoot
Good
somebody?
point. Not very often. I mean, in other
Right?
words, we're not really thinking about that if we got somebody shooting at us. If you shooting at me, I'm going to try to shoot back at you. Now that's that's a
Okay.
situation where you'd have to see if you actually in that situation to see
Well,
what
here's
you would
another
do.
one, Mike. Okay, so if you're going to talk
Uh-huh.
reckless, all right,
Mm-hmm.
we're shooting it. We have to shoot inside the car, and there's other passengers in the car,
Yeah, that's
right?
in other
I
words,
mean,
do I ever see a situation where I would shoot into a car with somebody shooting at me, whether or not there's other occupants? Yeah, there's definitely situations where I could see I might have to make a decision to pull that trigger. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Like Katrina says, if she feels that it was a legit good shoot and it was a fair shot. I mean, again, everybody's going to have a difference in opinion, right? You have to look at through the lens as if you're that officer, you have to put yourself on scene and you have to make a decision of everything that Mike and I just talked about. Your surrounding areas, who's where. There's other officers in the area, the people outside. And what they understand is this guy is firing off rounds in a reckless manner. It is what it is.
Good comment, Zach. Zach
I,
makes a good comment.
what's that?
He's we like I was saying earlier, Zach. I agree with you. It's easy Monday morning quarterback, and as folks can see, this is not an easy decision to make in a split second. You see what I'm saying?
It's not. It's not.
One officer might do something, another officer might not. What this officer is going to have to establish in a court of law is he's going to establish that, number one, he identified a deadly threat. And he identified a threat that was sufficient enough for him to turn around and use lethal force against him. He's going to have to justify that. He's going to have to explain that, why he thought it was justified to use deadly force, as in any police shooting, right? And it's going to have to be up to other people to decide if they agree with him or not. That's what it boils down to, folks. And as you can see, it's not always an easy decision, and you're not always going to have the same decision by two officers. One officer might do something, another officer might do something completely different.
Yeah, Tim, he did take cover after he shot. He then went back to the right quarter panel of the vehicle that was there, and then that's when he popped up in the truck and got his service rifle out. I think somebody else had a comment too. Matt. War, the officer in Iraq or Afghanistan vet, maybe automatic fire played into this. Total speculation. Yeah. So let us know what you're thinking, folks. I mean, would you have shot? Would you have made that shot? You heard from Mike
and like Tim says, was he really threatened or overreacting? Well, I can, like Corey was giving his explanation of why he chose to use deadly force. I can see that logic. I can also see the logic of an officer not shooting, at least not at that moment. You see what I'm saying? I like I say, I don't think I would have shot. Corey would have shot. So it's going to be one of those situations where you got to, you're going to have to, was any department policies violated, number one, and can you justify in a court of law that you had the mindset that you were trying to stop a lethal threat? You see what I'm saying? And that's a personal thing, really. As long as that officer can convince the jury that this is what was in his mindset when he shot, I'm not sure how you can go wrong with that. That's all you can do as an officer is say what was in your mind at the time you decided to do that. And if somebody agrees with it, then you're gonna be good to go. If not, you're gonna be stressed. You're gonna be stressed no matter what, right, Corey?
Right? Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, when I've had to pull out my service weapon and I've had to do it several times, and each time I'm going to be open with you all. I had pressure on that trigger, and as I'm there, and my mind is going 6,000 miles an hour, trying to process everything. Do I pull this trigger or not? I'm also saying, Lord, please don't let me have to pull this trigger. Please, God, don't let me pull this trigger. Please, Lord, don't let me pull this trigger. That's what I'm saying. While I had that gun drawn at this individual, right? It's a sad situation, no matter which way you want to look at it. But when that officer pulls that gun,
it is.
You got to he or she has to make that decision. Now,
and I'm looking at these comments
officer,
right here.
Let me just say this real quick.
Go ahead,
The officer always don't have to be the threat. He's there to protect the public. He doesn't necessarily have to
not just a threat to the
himself,
officer. Is he a threat to somebody else too? You see what I'm saying? Frank makes a good comment. He says, officer never attempted to announce himself. You can clearly see the barrel sticking in the air, and you take cover and announce your presence. Frank, I hear what you're saying. And I'm probably along those lines that you are on, except you have to, the thing is he a threat? Do you think he was a threat shooting 40 rounds in the air? And was it a threat enough for that officer to take immediate action and shoot back through a fence that he don't see the target, but he has a good idea where he is, but he shoots and ends up ultimately killing the guy who was shooting in the air? I hear what you're saying, Frank, and this is a perfect example of all these comments that we get. We're getting a lot of comments, Corey.
Oh yeah. It's good. We love it. Keep it coming.
Yeah, keep it coming. We love this because we're seeing people having different views on this as far as whether or not the officer should have shot or not. You see what I'm saying? And if you're having all those different views, imagine that officer at that split second having to make that same decision. You see what I'm saying?
Right at that moment. And thank you, Megan, for your comment. Appreciate you. Yeah, I mean, again, you have to look at the fact that it is New Year's Eve, right? A lot of people out there firing off rounds, but the difference is you got 2 people shot, 1 killed.
Now we don't know if this guy was the reason behind that.
We don't know, but
still,
this is some of the things that the officer has to think about. Well, 2 people already shot, 1 killed, right? Do I let this shooting keep ringing off all night and risking this guy shooting recklessly like this, risk the lives of other people possibly getting killed, right?
Megan, I hear you. Megan, I hear you but let me ask you something, Megan. Do you think it's an immediate threat? A guy shooting 40 rounds in the air. Do you think that's a threat or not? That'd be my question to you, Megan. And maybe you don't think that's a threat. And I would like to know why. Or if you do think it's a threat, I'd like to know why. That's a good comment, Megan. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Blackjack. Nor do we know if the officer knows about the prior shot. The prior
shooting.
We don't.
We don't.
Right? We don't know. But we know that he was in that area because of shots ringing out. So, again, this is why we say you can't jump to conclusions on everything. You have to let things play out, right? There's a lot of still missing pieces that we don't know, right? We don't know the timeline. We don't know exactly what time these other 2 individuals were shot. Now, also, you have to get the ballistics from those gentlemen that were shot. And there's going to be the ballistics test done on the AR that this citizen that was deceased weapon he was using. You had to do the ballistics with that to see where this weapon or where these rounds came from, right?
Well, I tell you what, though, Corey, I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Well,
so
sure.
Let's assume that this guy, these rounds that hit those 2 individuals, let's assume that it was from this guy firing his gun in the air, right? That's part of the threat that you're saying that you are perceiving of this guy shooting in the air. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But is that enough to shoot him without, I mean, like Tim says, it was New Year's Eve. People shoot guns in the air all the time on New Year's Eve. You know what I'm saying? It sounds like, Tim, it sounds like what you're saying is you don't perceive somebody shooting guns in the air as an immediate threat to having to be shot by police. You see what do you say about that, Corey?
We
getting good. We 51 minutes into this right now, man.
I know, right?
Because we getting these comments and we love it.
Yeah,
You know
we love. I'm sorry, man. I got caught up in a comment that Chris Rhodes was saying. He's like, as the officer approached, there seemed to be something that changed in his line of sight before he began firing. I'm curious as to what he saw. Yeah, Chris. I mean, I saw the same thing too.
I thought it was when he heard the shots. I thought it was when he heard the shots fired.
It could be too. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the body camera was real good at giving you a lot of the good audio and then good visual of what he was seeing at the time. But, you know, it doesn't give you the full 360. I don't know what he saw. But what we saw. I got so sidetracked. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm getting caught up into the comments here. You know what I mean?
Mr. Clark makes a.
What's up, D. Clark?
I understand his opinion. He says officer had to drop. The officer did have a better perspective of the suspect than the suspect had of him. Right? Officer should be held accountable in this situation. You might be right, Mr. Clark. I mean, you might have a court of law decide that him shooting through the fence without seeing his target and whether or not, I think here's the key. Most people, or you got some people who are not interpreting shooting in the air as an immediate threat. You have others that are determining shooting in the air is immediate threat. Now, shooting 2 rounds in the air, I don't know. Shooting 40 rounds in the air, probably a little bit more of a threat than shooting 2. I think that's where the breakdown is, Mr. Clark, is us. Yeah. We're determining shooting in the air as whether that's an immediate threat or just a threat in general. You see what I'm saying?
And that's what the officer is processing, right? Excessive rounds being shot off like that is very dangerous, because we had a situation a couple years ago, probably about 6-7 years ago, up in Richmond. Again, New Year's Eve, guy goes outside, shoots out a few rounds, and I think like a block or so away, a little girl was outside, and one of those rounds hit her in the head and killed her. He was charged with her murder. And so that's what you have to think about. It's you don't have to be shooting directly at somebody. This is what we call indirect fire, right? You're shooting up those rounds, that round coming down is going to be coming down a little bit higher velocity. All right, and so it's going to go
Thanks
through.
For joining us, Matt Marks. Appreciate it.
It's going to go through, something, or it's going to hit something, and in this case, it hit the little girl. So yeah, it's reckless and it's excessive. Maybe so. Maybe if he did shoot off like 2 rounds, Mike, different story, right?
Maybe not.
We're probably looking at a maybe a little different situation. Now, if he did shoot off 2 rounds, would I have shot prior? No, definitely not then. I wouldn't.
Never say definitely.
Never say definitely, because he can still turn the weapon around on me and shoot me. He can shoot through the fence, right? Yeah. He can shoot through the fence. So you have to think about that.
But in this case, in this particular case, I think this guy was recklessly shooting in the air for New Year's Eve. I don't think it was in his mind or his intention that he was putting anybody's life in danger, because he's a reckless gun owner and wasn't thinking like that. You see what I'm saying? That's the thing. So I don't think he was recklessly trying to shoot somebody. He was shooting in the air like most irresponsible gun owners do on New Year's Eve, is shooting 40 rounds in the air. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he don't get to the range much to shoot his firearm. I don't know. But he had to shoot in the air in a residential neighborhood where anybody could get hurt by them 40 rounds. And that is where Corey, I think, is saying that's where the immediate threat comes into play. 40 rounds in the air, you like you say, are you going to wait until he decides that he doesn't want to shoot anymore? While 40, 50 rounds, maybe he reloads real quick with another banana clip and starts shooting in the air again. I don't know. Corey and I gave our thoughts on that. I know we're getting late in here, but we appreciate these comments. I love this discussion. There's a lot to it, and if anything, we want you guys to think about it without letting race play a role in it, without letting your emotions play a role in it. We want you to think of what could be in an officer's mind, and you can see from two former officers how they might have handled.
Yeah, we definitely would have handled it a lot different.
It's a tough one.
DB says, he saw he's referencing the officer, saw him go into the house. He saw him come out and start shooting. People shooting on New Year's Eve is still illegal, and the AR-15 sounds a lot different. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know if it was that exact gentleman, because the time he said that, pay attention to the time and how quick those shots rang off from the time he said, I saw the guy go in and put the gun out. Now he's outside and shooting again.
Frank, good funny comment, Frank. I like that.
So I mean, let us know what you think. I think, Mike, we need to do a part 2 to this. I think we need
I'd be interested to know what happens, what the outcome as far as when this plays through the courts. I'd be curious to know the outcome of this, and what is decided. But I think we got our point across as far as getting people to think of this in a neutral way of whether or not they think this was reckless or not. How an officer might think of it. You see what I'm saying?
So let us know what you think. Should we do a part 2 to this, continue this conversation on? And also hit us up on Facebook and keep us up to date, because everybody knows that, I'm here in Virginia, Mike's out on the West Coast in California. So keep us in the loop of what's going on. We definitely like to stay abreast of this and keep this conversation going. I think it's very important. I hope you all got something out of us. Also, let us know what your takeaway from this conversation was. Was it beneficial? And should we do more conversations like this? Let us know what you think, man. Because this is what it's all about, man. We're just two former law enforcement officers giving our perspective on what a reasonable officer should do. And as you saw tonight, all of you on here know Mike and I some way or another, and that we're pretty solid guys. But you saw you heard two different opinions on what we would have done in this particular shooting. So it's tough. It's tough, and a lot of times we just have to step back, take a deep breath, and leave emotions out, leave race out, and let's look at what we know, and then let's follow it from there.
Look at an incident as it is without clouding it with whether or not somebody is a racist cop, or they should have, whether or not they would have done this if they were white, if the guy was a white guy or a black guy or whatever it was. You see what I mean? I think it's more beneficial and more helpful for people to understand the incident. And you might have your opinion about that incident. As you see, you have different opinions on how an officer would have handled that. You know what I'm saying? Or not. And I think that's what it boils down to. And that's what's important is having to look at it that way. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
And you know, and I like this, and I thank everybody for respecting everybody's points of views, and that's what it's about: respecting everybody's points of views. We're humans, and we're not going to see everything the same way. But at the end of the day, we could go sit down and crack up in a cold one, or if you like coffee, I'm always down for a cup of Joe. But at the end of the day, we're able to still walk away. We're able to still treat everybody with respect and dignity. No matter what your opinions are about something, you have that right. And Mike and I both served in the military. We served as law enforcement, and I'm glad we had that right to have differences of opinions. And that's what makes us unique. And we thank y'all for joining us tonight.
Thanks to the viewers. We got a lot of comments. We love that. It opens up the discussion, gives us different avenues of looking at something. I might see comments that make me think something different.
I want to give a shout out to my buddy Kirk Moore. He's got a book out. Y'all check it out. I'll put a link to it in the description down here below. Kirk, so if you could send me your link and I'll put it on my YouTube page, and we'll get you some recognition out there, brother. But keep doing what you're doing, brother Moore. He's got a great book out, and forgive me for forgetting the name of it right now, Kirk. But get it to me, and I'll put it on our YouTube page, man, and get you out there. But thank y'all for joining us tonight. Y'all be blessed. And if you want to carry the conversation, man, hit me up on Facebook, man. We can carry the conversation on.
Yeah. And don't forget to switch over to YouTube too, real quick, and just hit that like, share, and subscribe button.
Yeah.
You know
I always forget. Yeah, that's right. It's More Wisdom 52. That's it. More Wisdom 52. So check him out. He's on Amazon and get his book, y'all. All right. So God bless y'all. Y'all take care, and we'll see y'all next week. And keep us updated on this case here in Canton, Ohio. And we'll do a part 2 to this. Thank y'all. God bless you. We love you. Peace out.